Did you not get the questions I sent you?
I did.
You didn't put any on here.
Is that my job?
I sent the questions to get incorporated into this.
I didn't think those questions were serious questions.
You were a great guest.
Yes.
I know, it's amazing. You should.
Thankfully, Amanda,
amazing is
I've
one
remembered
word.
some of that questions, and I will be asking them.
I gotta be honest, I was like, is this the part where they make fun of each other, or is this before the part they make fun of each other?
Yes, before part.
That never stops. Ready?
Ready. Jay, you ready? All right.
3 and 2 and 1.
The words have gotten all distorted. But what they meant to say was not reported. Before the torches come to town, we gonna burn this fort down.
Welcome back to FORTitude, guys. While Brenton Payne and I continue to argue over everything, including the mundane, we have come together in a united front for this particular guest. We have a really cool lady in-house to talk with us about some of the things she's accomplished in her life. Before we talk to her...
Do you ever get referred to as lady? I mean, is that like a common referral, lady?
I'm not sure I can say how I often get referred to as, so we'll just stick with lady.
That's a sign of respect, and it's the obvious sign. I don't know how else to acknowledge you.
MC.
If you're out there, you can find us more on roxomediahouse.com or our Twitter, FORTitudeFW, and additionally on the Fort Worth Inc. website. If you have complaints about Brenton Payne, please see the Contact Us button on the Roxo Media House website. Please fill that up. He needs to know where he stands. One interesting bit of news before our guest, Brenton. Are you excited about this year's Super Bowl that's far out in the distance? I'll take that as a yes.
I have no answer.
They just announced the Super Bowl lineup for this year's halftime show, February 13th in LA. So it's in a big spot. Dr. Dre, Snoop, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar.
Amazing. In LA that they would get those musicians.
This is a collection.
How did that happen?
This is a collection of some good ones, though. This ought to be fantastic.
Well, I found out just recently that 2 football teams play at the same stadium. You'd think a place like LA could build a bigger one, but another one.
Don't start down that rabbit hole. We could do a whole podcast on Los Angeles and football the catastrophe that it is.
Okay.
The voice you are hearing, folks, is that of Amanda MiCallef. She is our guest today, and you're about to find out why we find her fascinating. She's a Fort Worth native, and we have known her for quite some time. You might say we went to high school with her, or actually in school with her, elementary school through high school. Then some really cool stuff happened. Welcome to the show, Amanda. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks
for having me. And I want to give a disclosure to your audience. I'm not nearly as interesting as they've set me up to be. So
we'll let them decide for you.
Well, I don't want to get people with really high expectations, and then I'm boring.
No. We're not worried about that at all.
We've carefully designed this show around this being interesting and you. So, first off, high school for you. Where did you go to high school?
I went to Trinity Valley. I went to Trinity Valley kindergarten through my senior year.
Right.
The 13-year plan there.
A 13-year student, yes.
Oh, good.
Something happened, though, in high school. You disappeared.
I did. I talked my way onto a movie set in February of my senior year.
Okay.
It was supposed to be for 3 weeks. I think I stayed for 5. And I never went back to another 5 days of school in a row. Once you get out, it's really hard to kind of get back into it, right?
I recall you not being there, and I didn't really know why. I think it was a little
were
bit
you
of
guys the same grade?
We
yes,
were.
Yeah, we were. It kind of was quiet. I think they didn't want everybody to think that they could get away with doing what I did. And the funny story.
That's understandable.
And it's long enough now I can actually tell the story. So the way I made this happen is I called the movie crew that was shooting out in West Texas near my family's ranch and told them it was okay with my high school if I took a month off and did an internship with them.
Yeah.
And then I went and told our principal that the movie said it was okay as long as it was okay with them. And that I had talked to all my teachers, none of whom I had spoken to, and they were all good with it if he was good with it.
Yeah.
And then did the reverse with my teachers. And I'm sure everybody knew what I was doing, but they let me go anyway.
So what
was it, Fleming? Was it?
Yes, it was.
Was that a tough sell?
So no, he actually,
Fine.
I owe him big. He was great.
Yeah.
So
what you're telling us is lying is okay, kids, as long as it helps you build a career that you've obviously been very successful in.
And no one got hurt in my lives.
In the making of this lie.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's
yes.
right. So.
Streets of Laredo was the film.
Yes, it was.
The prequel to Lonesome Dove.
Yes, it was.
most of us are huge fans of Lonesome Dove. That was an experience, I'm assuming, that was eye-opening, and you fell in love quickly, right?
I did. I can remember I was on set for about 2 weeks, and I realized that every day I would start work at like 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And the first time I would look at my watch would be about 3:30 in the afternoon. And I wasn't looking because I was like getting ready to go or wanting to leave. I was just curious what time it was. And I was like, if I can do something for 10 hours and not even think about the time, this is what I should do.
You were so busy enjoying whatever you were doing that you didn't really realize what time it was.
Yep.
Gotcha. So before we get into more of your accolades, your family, that MiCallef family, is synonymous with Fort Worth, and for many reasons. Can we step back a little bit and talk about your father, Al, your brother, Mike, and how that all came to be? And
absolutely. Do you want me to go back with the beginning of Al's sort of origin story?
Sure. If you don't mind, we can go through that briefly. But
I'll do it quickly. So my dad, actually, both my parents grew up in Michigan. My dad grew up listening on some like shortwave radio to a show out of Del Rio, Texas, when he was a kid, and he decided that all he wanted to do was move to Texas and become a rancher. And then he saw a James Garner movie called Wheeler Dealer, and you can imagine what that's about, and decided, and he was a rancher who drove a big Cadillac and flew around in his own plane and bought art. And so that was his second really seminal moment for him, and he decided that he had to get to Texas and get to a ranch, and he wanted to be like James Garner in Wheeler Dealer. And that's kind of pretty much sums up Al. So he actually moved his silicone plant down here in 1974, trying to find a state that was a little more business friendly than Michigan was, which is highly unionized, and built a silicone plant out in Weatherford.
Is that Jamak we're speaking of?
Yes, that's Jamak.
Where does that name come from?
It was a combination of several people's names when they all started the business.
Yeah.
They were older gentlemen. And so over the years, unfortunately, they've since passed. And so now the only person left is the A for Al.
Okay. His first names. I was thinking MiCallef.
It was actually a combination of first and last names, which is really interesting to me. But that's what they did. Anyway, so that sort of started their life in Texas and really was the foundation for any other businesses that were started after that, and all the crazy fun things that my dad has done in his life. One of which, so to tie it into Mike, one of which is we have a ranch in West Texas, and there was nowhere to eat. And so my dad decided to open a restaurant called Reata, and then had some friends out from Fort Worth who really liked the restaurant and basically opened up their door to put a Reata in Fort Worth, actually at that time in the Bank One Tower. We are now in our second location in Sundance Square. But so my brother really focuses both on the restaurant as well as we have some other ranch developments out in West Texas and Michael's. Those are Michael's two big focus. And then any other loose ends.
Do you have any connection to the restaurant other than, are you involved at all?
I mean, so Michael and I both sit on the boards of all of our companies. They're all family owned. So they're, informal boards. And so we're very aware of what each other are doing. But I primarily focus on MiCallef Cigars and Jamak, and Michael primarily focuses on the ranch, the restaurant, and real estate developments. And then, investments in loose ends.
Right.
How come Michael got his picture with your dad at Szechuan, but I don't see you in that photo?
Welcome to my childhood.
Should we go on that tangent or just keep with the introductory stuff?
That is my favorite picture.
It's a great picture.
It really is. They were hunting. I was not on that trip.
Okay.
It's okay.
Jamak, it started from your dad and these people you mentioned. It's now the world's largest manufacturer of
privately owned. Yes. So about I guess in 2008 with the real estate craze, almost all the silicone companies got rolled up. And so we are now the sort of largest still standing family owned silicone manufacturer in North America. What
pieces of silicone do you manufacture?
What do we do?
Yes. What do you do?
We make a lot of seals and gaskets. So the seal around your oven or your freezer. We've been very busy this year with the vaccine needing super, super cold temperature freezers. Silicone is, a regular rubber can't get that cold. It'll crack, but silicone can. And so we've been busy making freezer gaskets like crazy.
Wow.
A lot of things like that.
Britton cooks over an open flame, so he does not
have. You have no idea that.
Oven.
Okay, well,
what is a freezer or refrigerator? I'm not sure of this concept. We have an ice block in a closet.
But then you don't need silicone.
So when Reata in Fort Worth began, we'll keep that Fort Worth centered. It used to be on top of the building before the tornado came through.
Yes.
The year I don't recall.
I think it was just the 20th. I think like last March was 20 years or 25 years.
But since that happened?
Yes.
Oh,
at that location, you had some pretty big chefs there, right? Like that have gone on to other things.
Yeah,
at
we've
the
been
restaurant?
really fortunate. A lot of the sort of more namey people in Fort Worth have started at Reata. It's great.
Yeah.
And you know, the restaurant community in Fort Worth is incredibly tight and very supportive of each other.
And I have to share this story with you because I've never shared it before. My wife, actually, she probably knows, but I've been happily married for the better part of 18 years, I think. I love you, honey. Before I met my wife and I wanted to go on a date with somebody, if I thought I liked this person or we had met for a while and I liked this person, Reata on top of the building was that if I took her there, that's because I liked her, because I couldn't afford really to spend a lot of money. That was the one big spend if I wanted to really impress this person. So I was always my dating trick.
I did not know that.
That was the one on the roof.
Yes.
That was
right.
the top. Yeah,
that's correct. But that was my little secret, if you will. And so, but luckily I didn't need it from my wife. We fell in love organically and didn't need all that.
That's very nice.
Yes.
I thought the show was about Amanda today.
It is.
Not about JW's marriage.
But knowing that story about Reata made my whole trip here worthwhile.
Okay, good. So you're in the movie business, or you're making films as a young person. When did the move to LA happen?
About 2 years after I started in the business. After
Amarillo, after the high school deal?
Yes. I kind of looked around and realized that every time I was working on all these movies. So I guess I should back up and clear something up. Because JW and I went to Trinity Valley, so you would assume that I went on to college. But I ruined their 100, although now I'm giving it back, their 100% college attendance. I did get in college.
How dare you?
Yes, we need to go back and look at those records. Surely they bluffed and did not tell anybody this.
So I did actually get into school, and I ended up deferring for a couple semesters. And then finally they were like, you have to either show up or give up your spot. And I was happily working in the movie business.
You were too far gone at that point.
I mean, yes, it was.
So no college for you?
No. So anyway, so that's how come 2 years after high school, I moved out to California when I was 20.
But you were doing the movie business kind of just on any projects you could locally and stuff?
You know, it just sort of kept, I thought when I took the first job that I was just going to do out of high school, that I was just going to work on it, and it was going to wrap in December, and I was going to go to college in January. And then one thing just led to another thing. And, you know, I just kept getting work.
Yeah.
And no one ever asked where I went to school.
Yeah.
And so I kind of looked up in 2 years and realized that, at least for the moment, that wasn't something I was going to focus on, and that all the department heads were coming from LA or New York. And so I thought, well, I guess I got to get to LA or New York, at least for a few years. That was my intention, to go to LA for 2 years. I think I was there 23 years. So, you know, best laid plans.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What was the first film you worked on after moving to LA? You recall?
I remember, I don't remember what it was called. It was terrible. It was a Cinemax movie.
Okay. You've got his interest, I know.
Well, it's even worse than that, because it was a Cinemax movie and they had just partnered with Playboy. And so there was no true nudity or anything like that, but it was like, imagine like a porn movie, but without the porn. Okay. I mean, it was that level of bad. Anyway, so yes, you know, but everything can't be an award winner.
Yeah.
Several of your bigger films, Beneath the Dark, Grand Champion, Beyond the Whisper, are these the three ones? These are the three ones that we like to discuss a little bit, if you can. Or
sure.
Which were those three are your favorites? Do you have a favorite?
I don't know that I have a favorite. And, you know, it's funny, when I look back, there's movies that I worked on that I wasn't a producer on that I also loved. I mean, that were in some ways some of the best experiences. So it's hard to say, but I'm happy to talk about any of them.
Well, Grand Champion for one. Can we talk about that for a sec?
Yes, that was the first movie I produced. It had planes, trains, boats, and kids in it. You're not supposed to do any of those four things in your first movie. So
really?
I did all four of those things.
It's like one of those rules that it's just going to make everything that much more difficult.
Yes. But, you know, when you're young and you don't know better, you just go for it.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did.
We know that.
Yes.
Indeed.
We did a podcast like that.
Where was this movie filmed?
We filmed all over Texas. I mean, we filmed a big chunk of it in Snyder, Texas, of all places. We also shot out in West Texas. We shot in Midland. I mean, we kind of were everywhere. It was a movie about raising a kid who raised the Grand Champion steer and then sells it and realizes they're going to eat it. And so he kidnaps his steer back and he's trying to get back home. It was a G-rated movie, total kid movie, really fun.
Yeah.
What was the budget for that movie?
Oh gosh, it was $2 or $3 million. It's been so many years now.
What, did you call the movie a success?
Yes, and I mean, financially, it was not anywhere near what we wanted it to be, and there were a whole world of domino effect that happened. We got it sold and we got it in theaters, and in the movie theater, in the movie business, that is a pretty big accomplishment. So in that sense, yes. And we learned a lot. We had a great time, but
think because that's a pretty interesting concept. It's got a lot of Fort Worth ties to it, in the way we have the stock show. You think if you did it today, same movie, but just with the distribution that exists, it would be a lot more successful?
It would have. I mean, that when we released that movie, there were 7 players, and everything sort of trickled off them, and through sort of a perfect storm of things, it never kind of got the big push it was supposed to.
Yeah.
And that would you're right, between social media and the different distribution channels, today you would have a very different opportunity.
Does that happen a lot in the movie business too, where it's like you're in production, you're making the movie, everyone's promising you the world, we're going to do this with you, we're here with you, and then you get to the final product that you think is a good final product, and they're like, we're out. I mean, is it kind of part of it? It
can be, but that would at least imply that somewhere along they lost interest because of the quality of the film. You'd be surprised how often it has nothing to do with that. And it's that, you got bumped out of a spot at Sundance because somebody else with better political ties got in, or, that somebody else was able to sort of slide into your, day and date release, and then you get pushed to a worse date. I mean, a lot of times things happen that have nothing to do with whether your movie's good or not. There's just something else that is a little more shiny at that moment.
So is that the reason in paying a lot of money for a good agent, or for being present at those? Or it's just,
having the better your representation is, without question, the better your chances are of not having one of those incidents happen.
Okay.
Was Grand Champion the movie that involved Julia Roberts?
So Julia Roberts' niece, Emma, was in it.
Niece, that's correct.
Yes, and then Julia Roberts did make a little cameo appearance. Her husband, who she's been married to since we made the movie, I mean, I think they got married that year, was our cinematographer. So she was around for the whole shoot. She was, Julia Roberts, we needed extras one day, and Julia Roberts went to Walmart and got on the loudspeaker and asked people to come out to the movie, which was pretty amazing of her. She was incredible.
Kind of
she is so unbelievably down to earth. You would be really surprised.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So obviously you're in LA now making films. Are you meeting people that we all would call celebrities? Are you involved in that scene very much, being around movies?
I mean, you definitely are meeting people. I wouldn't say that was ever my scene. I was more behind the scenes, and then even, when I was going out and things, I was not the person who was regularly out at the clubs. That was just sort of not my thing.
Yeah, this photo here
that's way more.
Is that kind of your scene?
That's a little more my scene. That is.
There's a lot going on there.
Is that Spielberg at a young age, or who is? Describe what's going on here.
That's actually a fellow Fort Worthian. That is Chad Feehan.
Country Day.
Yeah. And he's big time, right?
He's been
Ray Donovan.
Yes, he was the executive producer on Ray Donovan. He's been working on some stuff. No. Chad's doing incredibly well. He's incredibly talented. We had a great time working together. He directed the movie set that we're currently on. That is actually a set.
Really?
Yes.
Look at the VHS tapes back there.
Yes, exactly. So that was not we did not live there. That was set up that way on purpose. And yeah, you can see that we were shooting nights too, to defend myself in the middle of nowhere. And so that is what set life looks like.
Was that local? Was that in
LA? That was outside of LA. We were out in this abandoned motel out near San Bernardino.
For people who don't understand that much, probably myself included, what's the movie making process like? Generally speaking, the time frame and how much stress goes into what you do producing a movie.
Well, I mean, time frame wise, it can be. I mean, it's 18 months at minimum. I mean, I guess now editing has changed, but we were still cutting film back then. That's how old I am. But easily, I mean, a lot of times it's 3-4 years. I mean, you find a project, you develop a project, you get it set up, then you have to find a writer. If you don't have a writer, but if you have a script, you've already got a writer, but you're looking for a director and cast. Then you finally get into production. You could shoot the movie anywhere from, 18 days would be on a really, really low budget movie to it could be hundreds of days.
Right.
And then you go away and edit it for months to months and finally release it. So it's not fast. I guess it's stressful. stress is sort of what you make it, I guess.
Sure.
But, I think you live in that world for so long.
You're enjoying, I assume, the excitement involved.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you kind of become a junkie on it. I mean, it's you spend time carefully preparing because things are going to go wrong on set. And then it sort of becomes this game of like, how are you going to overcome?
Mm-hmm.
Is it? So, but are you only doing one movie at a time, or like you're doing like the way to make it work is remodel 5 homes at once and maybe not get the quality? Like, how does that all work?
Right. So, I mean, the studios are set up very much like you just said. They'll make 20, 25 movies a year. They need a few of them to hit big, some to break even, and they know some are going to lose money. And so, yes, if you're playing on that level, that's absolutely how you're going to be successful. And then the most notable producers and directors, you can only direct one movie at once, but a lot of times producers will have things in various stages of production all going at the same time in big teams. I was an independent producer. A lot of the material I gravitated to was never going to be studio kind of pictures. It was pretty dark and eerie. And so there was not enough of us to be doing multiple things at once. I mean, we might be working on a script while we were shooting a movie or something, but we wouldn't ever have had the bandwidth to really be in 2 movies in production at the same time.
How difficult raising capital for these films? I mean, there's a whole aspect of the money that has to pay for all this. How are you involved in that side of it? How hard is that part?
It's nearly impossible. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, it's definitely, it's easier as you become more established, and then it can be easier as you have obviously the right cast on board or director or writers and things like that. But it's definitely not an easy thing to get done.
So it wasn't when you were there, but I'm thinking like with all the stuff that exists now, it's got to be 10 times as more difficult, right?
It's yes and no. To some degree, you can shoot a movie on an iPhone now, so you don't need very much money. And if you have something and you're passionate about it, you don't need...
Go with it, Brenton. Get your phone.
You don't need to have a lot of money to make a movie anymore. At the same time, there's so many people creating content, trying to, be the little signal and all that noise to actually get some attention becomes that much harder.
Okay.
20 plus years in LA, what's the craziest thing that ever happened to you?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea.
We can bleep out words or things later if you need us to.
I really don't know. This is a terrible question.
It's maybe something you saw somebody do, anything.
What's funny, the craziest thing that happened to me was not in LA, but it was a movie business story. Can I tell that story?
Please, that would be great.
I was asked to go to Wichita, Kansas, to basically oversee the production of a independent film that the person who was financing it asked me to go and basically babysit, essentially. And so I think I was there in a producer capacity, but I can't even remember. But essentially, I was just making sure that the money was getting spent and things were happening and all that good stuff. And their cinematographer went out to a strip club. And
what's that, Britton? You talk about that all the time. I've never
not
been
in Wichita, Kansas. I haven't.
I mean, there's so many other things. I'm not going into the long story because that's really insane. But anyway, goes out to a strip club with the crew, leaves with one of the strippers, goes back to his hotel. The next morning,
see, we have one of those buttons. So go ahead.
the next morning, I was like, I don't know if I can say this. The next morning, he's not on set. And everybody's getting ready to roll out in the vans and go to set. Sorry, I guess he's not waiting to leave for set. And I, ask somebody to go check in his room, and he is face down, needle in his arm.
Oh no!
Basically all but dead.
He's diabetic, right?
So
is that why
he shot an 8-ball with the stripper.
Oh, no.
And so then I had to call his 8-month pregnant wife and explain where her husband was.
Oh no.
That was probably the craziest thing that ever happened to me.
Did you make that call prior to calling the producer you were out there on behalf of, or
no.
which call first?
It was really funny because I called him and I'd worked with this guy a lot, and I called and I didn't get him and I left a message and I'm like, you need to call me. We have a problem. And we'd worked on a ton of things and he was impossible to get on the phone, and he called me back within like 15 minutes and he's like, you never say things like that. What happened?
Yeah.
And I was just like, so anyway.
All right, let's talk about Arsenic. When did Arsenic find you?
So I wish the camera can't really see your face right now. So audience, you should see the little JW looks like the cat that ate the mouse right now.
Yes, the tail is wagging out of his lips.
Anyway, okay, so I got frustrated with the film business for some of the reasons that we've brought up today. It was just the business had changed a lot. I actually was on set less and less. In some ways, I was getting bigger movies set up with like big name producers and things, but at the same time, I wasn't getting to make them. So I started looking for an outlet to just kind of, scratch the itch of being on set and collaborating with other creative people. And I started doing still photo shoots, not thinking it was ever going to become anything. And the one thing we did that was kind of different than what was happening in Los Angeles is there's a million models in LA, but they kind of usually get stuck shooting whatever the photographer wants to shoot. And so we sort of started playing around with this idea that I would help produce photo shoots that were kind of the vision of the model and find a photographer that was down to be very collaborative and things like that.
Imagine that artist license kind of thing, huh?
Yeah. And the timing was interesting because Instagram was just starting to happen. And we started posting. I started sharing these pictures with the models, and they started posting them. And it just sort of caught fire, and it grew fairly quickly. And then a friend of mine who was an agent at CAA at the time, he ended up leaving CAA to come on board when we decided to make it a real venture. But he's the one who sort of had this idea that, well, we don't have to shoot all the content that we're posting. We can just ask people to submit things by using a hashtag. And that seems so crazy now. I mean, you're like, well, duh, but this is no one was doing this.
Yeah. This is in 2015, right?
Yeah. And
what's
so
CAA? What's that?
Creative Artist Agency.
Okay.
So one of the really big, powerful agencies. And so we started doing that, and that kind of further, helped the growth. And then we also got on Snapchat very early and started shooting on Snapchat, and that kind of tipped it the other way, and it blew up. And I mean, we had audiences bigger than MTV and other cable stations watching our social media content. And we kind of became one of the first social media magazines.
As of today, you have 1.2 million followers
on Instagram. Yes,
Instagram, that's correct. Obviously there's other.
We have an exponentially smaller number for this show.
Yes, by a factor of 1.2 million.
Well, you would like to know, as a marketing professional, I would tell you that a smaller niche audience can sometimes serve you better than a large audience.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have folks that are going to there to actually, like, did it help the models, right?
Absolutely.
Like the people that kind of created this?
So the ecosystem was really, really interesting. Especially when we first started, we didn't pay. I mean, this was a hobby. We did it on our weekends. And then even as we grew, if we were just shooting content for Arsenic, we didn't pay. But if we were doing a branded deal or something, if we were getting paid, the models got paid, basically is how it worked. But because we got big and the models, a lot of the people we worked with were big, then new people would come in and they would be able to grow very, very big. And so somebody would go on a trip with us, and in a week's time, they could go from having, a couple hundred followers to tens of thousands of followers. And then they're getting brands offering them money. So yeah, we were really able to kind of create this sort of
influencer ecosystem kind of.
That's really what it was. And, and everybody sort of got it and supported each other and helped post each other to kind of get people up to the next level and things like that. It was, it's funny. People think of it so sort of vapid in LA, and those things do exist, but sort of when you peel back all the layers, like there's people have each other's back too.
Yeah,
for sure. So, but you found a niche with Arsenic. Are you still involved?
So about 2 years ago, the Arsenic was pivoting to more of a tech play, and so I had been given some thought about wanting to come back home and work with my dad and my brother. And it was kind of a good moment for me to sort of give up my day-to-day activities. So I'm still on Arsenic's board. My co-founder is still with Arsenic and doing.
Can we mention his name?
Billy Hawkins.
Billy Hawkins, okay.
And so.
What's his background real quick, if you don't mind?
So he was he's went to Harvard Law, then went into investment banking, and ended up in the mailroom at CAA, where he grew to become one of the biggest agents there. He represented everyone from Steven Spielberg to Eva Longoria to Will Smith.
Wow.
And then sort of left because he got really fascinated by all this new stuff that was happening in sort of short form content.
How'd you guys meet?
Playing polo. Not he and I played polo with his boss when he was an investment banker, and he was just getting ready to leave to go work in the mailroom at CAA, and she's like, you guys should meet.
Oh yeah, very good.
So yeah,
you're not getting more boring. I can tell you. You're getting.
Well, let me ask on the LA move back deal. Does that life get tiresome? I think so many people look at it like, oh boy, it would be so great. It's a beautiful place and all this excitement and stuff. But as one grows and older and a little more mature, is that kind of?
I loved LA until one day I just went, I don't want to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic, but at some point it's like, I have to get a parking ticket and park in a parking garage to go to the grocery store. It's just like every single thing is kind of hard.
Yeah.
And I just went, I don't think this is, I've done what I came here to do, and I'm ready to go back to Texas.
Yeah.
Came back to Texas in 2019?
Late 2019. I've been almost exactly 2 years.
What did you do when you got back to Texas?
So I started working with family companies, and I went to work and focus on marketing and sales for our silicone company. And I started doing marketing for our cigar company, having never smoked a cigar.
And you did this, I think.
I
Is
can't
it this
remember.
early on?
I don't remember if this may have been right before I came back, but it was somewhere in the last few years. Yes, because Arsenic's up there. So this is prior to, but this is in Texas. This is at
Austin?
Motorsport Ranch out in Crescent.
Oh, nice.
wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that an electric vehicle? Because it says electromotive on it.
It is not an electric vehicle.
Do they make electric vehicles like that?
They do. They
Okay.
do. It's actually a whole division.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing this, and how successful, or
So I
just for fun?
just for fun.
Okay.
I would love sometime to actually do one of the leagues, but at the moment I don't have the time. And so I guess I probably drove open wheel the first time 20, 25 years ago. And I occasionally, when I'm here, will get to go out and jump in the car.
I would ask you to take Brenton for a ride, but I see there's not much room
No,
for a
I can't do
passenger.
that.
I was going to
Yes.
also ask, is the track there on University considered open wheel? The one on the way to Joe T's, if you're coming from, is that open wheel? It's a go-kart. It is.
It's it can be open wheel if you want it to be.
I'm sorry for that last question, Amanda. So speaking of the family business,
Yes.
the cigar company,
Yes.
when did it begin, and how are things going?
So it began like in 2016, 2017. It sort of had a slow start. I joined in late 2019 along with Dan Thompson, who is currently president, and we've been having a ton of fun. And it's starting to come together. It's been really interesting. We've sort of took a step back in 2020 and changed a lot of our strategies. We took ourselves off of all e-com only stores to focus on family-owned brick and mortars and online through those stores only.
Oh, I see this organic thing, kind of like the Arsenic coming back up, huh?
Yes.
Where are the cigars rolled?
In Nicaragua.
Nicaragua.
Yeah. And then also like the Arsenic thing, pulled out of all of our print, contracts and anything like that, and have really focused on growing the MiCallef cigar ambassador community and a lot of social media things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you smoke cigars?
I do now.
When you pulled out in the parking lot and the door opened, a bunch of smoke came out of your car. I was wondering if that was.
That was
I'm
me.
Totally kidding.
No, I
totally
do not
kidding.
smoke in my car, and I do not smoke in my house.
Good.
But how often do you smoke cigars?
Anywhere from, once to 3 or 4 times a week. I like a sort of community workspace. And so we have taken one office out at the distribution center and turned it into a cigar lounge. And Dan and I basically sit in there all day and at a dining room table and work. And so, oftentimes at some point we'll smoke a cigar.
Yeah.
Very fun. Very fun. So what else are we doing for fun besides work right now?
Well, that, and then I just had, so as I've previously established, I didn't go to my undergrad, but I decided that I wanted to fill some gaps. And so I recently enrolled at TCU, and I'm getting my executive MBA. So between work and that, I don't know that I have much time for fun.
I don't think
But
you have much time for fun.
But work and school are a lot of fun. I'm having a really good time.
It's amazing how you did that without going to college and you going back to do it. It's a phenomenal structure, I would say, because it's all worked out for you, and
I want to be
just the way it's supposed to.
I would not recommend my path. It did work out, and I've been very fortunate. But it probably would have been easier had I done it in a little more traditional way.
Very good. How can people find the cigars?
MiCallefcigars.com, and there's a map to all the retailers that we're in.
Mm-hmm. Where is Al today?
Where is Al today? I'm going to guess he's at AME in Parker County or Silverleaf in Fort Worth. But he's in a lounge somewhere in the area right now, as far as I know.
With a cigar in hand, possibly?
Probably.
Does your share location say lounge for Al? Like like he's got a special denote.
Yes,
kind of
exactly.
thing?
That's pretty much where he spends most of his days. I mean, he comes into the office for a few hours and then he's off to the lounge.
Yeah, will he push the MiCallef cigars there just automatically? Hey, would you really like to try one of these?
A little bit. A funny thing happens, big surprise, that MiCallef quickly becomes one of the best, if not the best selling cigar in whatever lounge he's spending most of his time in.
Yeah.
even without him doing it, because people, they're like, hey, that's the guy who, it's not that often you walk in a cigar lounge and the guy who started is sitting there. And then people are like, well, I want to try one of those. So
yeah,
inadvertently, he pushes it. If you're a pretty woman, he definitely pushes it. And that's pretty much how it works.
Has he made it onto Arsenic yet?
Not as no. And funny thing, if you look at Arsenic, there's one thing you won't see very much of. And that would be guys
that look like Al.
Yeah.
Does Al still go to Szechuan from time to time?
From time to time, not like we used to.
Right.
But he definitely does still get in there.
Good. Well, please tell him hello for us.
I will for sure.
You and Mike, you guys have similar energy in Life Force Energy. You're going all the time. Love that about you. I love that about Mike. You guys spend a lot of time together. Did you guys see each other ever?
Oh, yeah. So we, as a family, we see each other. We have family dinner every Monday just because we are all going so many different directions.
Where are you guys having dinner? And just for our own personal notes?
We bounce around.
Szechuan.
You never know. That was actually last Monday, but we hadn't been in a long time. But we bounce around, try new places. So I for sure get to see everyone together then. And then Michael and I often catch up throughout the week. So, yeah.
Let's pretend that you survived. You're getting your MBA and that's done and everything else is stable as it is now. What's the next big project for Amanda?
Well, I've got, there's a lot of interesting directions that we can take MiCallef cigars, even beyond cigars. And so I think that playing more in the consumer goods world is kind of where I have my eye on the horizon.
Okay. Very good. So we've truly loved learning more about you. Some things I've never heard before. This is fantastic. We like to ask our guests a special question. Brenton, why don't you handle this one?
Oh, thanks, J-Dub.
Yes.
Handing it over.
Handing it over.
Well,
Right. Toss it to my buddy.
So we do this deal where, best day of the life, like family stuff aside and all of that thing. So it could be even that picture in there of directing that film, it's whatever it is. So what's the best day of your life thus far?
Okay, well, I want to first say I'm not married and I don't have kids. So I get to so I don't have any of that.
No, that's good because we don't allow that. So
I was going to say, so I don't have any of that pressure.
For you.
The luckiest human alive. Wait, that was my intro title. Sorry. I'm sorry, kids and honey. I do love you.
What was I'm a very lucky person. I've had a lot of great days. I don't know if I can boil it down to a single amazing day.
We're gonna need you to actually.
Okay,
it's
a lot of
because
pressure.
some people have answered that, and that's okay too. Like I like the whole thing. Like a producer's mind probably is like it's the whole process of the deal.
It is. I don't know that. I mean, there's moments, but I don't know that I could. I don't know that I could pick one. I really can't. Like, hey, I've had more good days than bad days, so it would be very tough. I'm sorry.
All right, we'll let you off the hook.
Yes.
No worries.
See, that's what a producer does, guys. They persuade people to whatever they want.
You're a big proponent of the women's movement or women's equality, things of that nature. Can we speep to that for 2 seconds before I let you go?
Absolutely.
You do so many things for women. What is your aim? What is your goal in all this?
Just I want to I'll back up. So, and I hope this isn't too controversial. I had a really interesting thing when Me Too was happening. Like everybody, I was saddened by the stories and shocked and horrified. Not that shocked, but the thing that really sort of stuck with me was that part of the problem is that we aren't teaching young women to say no in a really impactful, clear way. And you end up in a gray area a lot. And gray areas, I think, help lead to these sorts of Me Too moments. And so if there was one thing, I just want to give women a voice to feel like they can be confident enough to say what's on their mind and be okay, not just going along because you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or doing that because you have to be a good hostess and just really, hopefully bring a different perspective to the table that you can, carve your own way and you can make waves and you don't have to go along to get along.
Greatness.
Yes, thank
you, Amanda MiCallef, for joining us.
This was fun.
Please visit us on roxomediahouse.com or FORTitude FW on Twitter and the Fort Worth Inc. website.
And what about cigars?
MiCallef Cigars.
Okay.
Yes.
All right,
Good.
Brenton, burn the fort down, baby.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.